Call to order the December 2024 last finance meeting of the year. Welcome everybody here. For our new council members, we traditionally have a consent and a general agenda like all the other committees, but today we have no consent items, and we have three general items. So we will start with G1. If the clerk will please read that one.
Item G1, resolution authorizing a contract for the dehumidification unit upgrade at Fairgrounds Annex.
Mr. Rao, before you start, if you'll please comment, I think we've spent some other money here recently. If you could comment on both of those. Because the last time you mentioned dehumidification was coming, so give us a little history and tell us what we're doing.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joins, Mayor Pro Tempore Adams, members of City Council. So the item for you today is the second of two major investments that we're planning to make in the what we now call the Fairgrounds Arena, our ice rink operation. So I believe it's either at the last council meeting or in November, you all considered an item for the reconstruction of the ice rink. That rink was original to the building when it was built in 1989.
And that's the cooling system that makes the ice.
That's correct. All the piping, everything. So that project is going to involve, demolishing all the concrete, replacing the piping, all that infrastructure that we need to have in place to be able to create ice, for the ice season, which includes the Thunderbirds hockey season, youth hockey, adult hockey, the ACC hockey league, all the various ways that we have ice business up there. So this item before you is the second major investment. I kind of hinted at it at that meeting that in addition to the ice rink, we also need to replace the dehumidification system for that building. We want to make sure that we have can maintain the proper climate in the building so that we don't have any risk of the ice literally melting. Oftentimes the Thunderbirds will play into late March, even early April, and so if it gets warm, it could really kind of create a climate that we really don't want. So this project is being funded from limited obligation bonds that the council approved back in 2023. You all approved $3.5 million for and lobs to address these kinds of issues for the fairgrounds. This particular project, we did go through the traditional bidding process. The low bidder did not meet the NWBE contracting goals and did not demonstrate good faith efforts, so we went to the second low bidder who did meet the NWBE subcontracting goals. I think are 7% and 4% for the project. And so the item before you is a resolution to recommend awarding the contract to Ridge Mechanical, Inc. In the amount of $1,453,540. So that combined with the contract that you all awarded for the ice rink reconstruction totals just a little over $2.6 million. So we were able to do this within the budget that you all had authorized a couple of years ago. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? And by the way, I think the question was asked at the last time when we were talking about replacing the ice, about kind of do we make any money on the Thunderbirds, and that's in here, and we do make some money.
We do.
And Ms. Scipio is the hockey expert. So if you have any questions, she goes to the games.
I'm the hockey fan.
And a hockey fan.
Yes.
Any questions, comments?
I do have.
Yes, ma'am.
With these repairs and renovations, are they going to be concurrent with the system we're going to be doing while they're playing the season, or do they wait until the season is over for this year?
So the ice rink reconstruction will occur, after the season. We have a very narrow window that we want to do it in, probably sometime in June, so that we can have the floor restored, before the Carolina Classic Fair, because we do obviously utilize the arena for the fair. So we'll have all that in place. The dehumidification, I'm not sure about the schedule for that, but
They can start during the season because the system's sustainable now.
okay, so yeah, so I think they'll be scheduled, in such a way that we'll still be able to sustain the climate in the building.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve G1. Now, the previous meeting, we had to vote by hand because the system's not working, is that right? It's still on.
Yeah.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? By the way, my computer does come up.
That's because you're special.
I am special. But anyway, just want to let y'all know, just a data point. For some reason, mine's usually the one that doesn't, but anyway.
True.
We'll now go to G2. The clerk will read that one.
Item G2, resolution establishing a speculative building loan program to support developers in job creation and investment projects.
Mr. Miller, if you will comment on this one, please.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and members of council. You've heard the term spec building before. Sometimes we call it speculative so that everyone knows what we're abbreviating. But those, as you know, are partially constructed buildings that are intended to attract industrial tenants during or shortly after construction. They are an important economic development tool that provides several benefits. Spec buildings offer immediate availability that decreases the timeline for a business to occupy the space, ramp up operations, create jobs and investment more quickly. They serve as a proactive sign of confidence in the local marketplace, and they provide flexible designs that can be modified to suit both diverse industry and the specific needs of companies. Our economic development partners at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. estimate that approximately 50% of companies state a preference for spec buildings that allow build-to-suit upfits. Currently, our community has no spec buildings over 100,000 square feet, putting us at a disadvantage for job creation and investment. I'll note that in recent years, the city has provided loans to developers to construct spec buildings. One of them was 200,000 square feet and 144,000 square feet at Union Cross Industrial Center and 250,000 square feet in the park at 74. All of those buildings are fully leased with capital investments of over $50 million and creation of approximately 175 jobs. I'll also mention that 2 of those 3 loans were repaid ahead of schedule, and the third is expected to be repaid by the end of this year, which is also ahead of schedule. Staff is recommending the creation of a spec building revolving loan program to provide interest-free loans to assist developers with hard construction costs of spec buildings in the city. The proposed guidelines you will see are on Exhibit A that was included with the item. I won't read them all through for you, but I will hit a couple of highlights. That the program would total $7.5 million. I will note that there is a slight change in the proposed source of funds where it would be $2.5 million from the repayment of the current spec building loan that we are again expecting repayment by the end of the year, and $2.5 million from Economic Development Loan Fund, and then $2.5 million from Economic Development Sites and Infrastructure Fund. The loan would be repaid upon occupation by a for-profit tenant of the space and subsequent selling or refinancing of the facility. That is consistent with the 3 previous spec building loan agreements that we have had. But I'll note that regardless of the occupancy status of the space or the selling ownership of the facility, no later than 5 years after approval, the loan has to be repaid. Those loans, the difference with the creation of this program means that those repaid funds are used to fund future loans through this same program, so it would operate as a revolving loan fund. The maximum loan amount from the city would be based on the square footage of the building being constructed. Would need to be a minimum size of 100,000 square feet. If it is between 100 and 150,000 square feet, maximum loan amount, $1.5 million, $2.5 million for 150 up to 300,000 square feet, and then $3.5 million for any building over 300,000 square feet. Also, we know that we don't want to tie up funds for projects that keep getting pushed out further and further. So we have built in where we're encouraging shovel-ready sites and projects. So the building must be completed within 24 months of loan approval, and that the approval may terminate if that start date has not been met. The last thing I will mention that is intended to address the concern about providing incentives from companies that may be simply relocating from one area of the city to another is that there's the provision that certainly both the city and the developer would be partnering with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. to market the building to non-local companies in target industries, but also leave it eligible for existing industry companies if they are creating new, significant number of net new jobs or a significant investment in the community. So that way we have the flexibility of uses there. I will note that any request for the use of these funds, they still will come to City Council for review. So this is simply for the creation of the program. It is not approving any specific project. If it is approved today, it will go to City Council on January 6th. And we also have our partners at Greater Winston-Salem, Mark Owens and Ellis Kiefer are here in support.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but we also only finance up to 10% of the cost.
That is correct.
So they
Yes, sir.
got 90% of it's their skin in the game. Mr.
Correct.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this program has been very beneficial to the community. It's worked so well, as Ken just reviewed. Ken, remind me, because it was last year or year before, we set aside some of our 2018 bond monies, economic development, make sure they were tied to this program. So are you using a piece of that money to cover this?
Yes, sir. I believe that is the same money that was used for the most recent loan for a spec building. Again, at the time, it was not part of the program, but yes, that's where $2.5 million of the proposed $7.5 is coming from. Yes,
Do you
sir.
remember how much is left set aside? Top of your head?
No, sir, I do not, but we can certainly get that to you.
Ms. Scipio?
I think this is a good, we've seen the fruits of this program before we made it official in these spec buildings. I had a question and a concern. We have built how many spec buildings by lending to, do you know about how many we have built?
It is, in recent history, it has been 3. And to be clear, we have provided financial assistance. We have not constructed the buildings ourselves.
And have any of them, how long have they been sitting vacant before they were occupied? Do we have a sense of turnaround?
They were all vacant for a very short period of time. They are all currently filled.
Yes.
And have really served their purpose that brings prospects to the area, gives a property that you are able to show there. So they have all been, I think all would agree that they've been successful.
And I think Mr. Clark may have answered it. The maximum we lend is up to 10% of the cost of the total building.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that was a concern too. Now, my other concern, most of these buildings have been built at our business parks that we've sort of created. And where they are located, I know for many companies, it's a great place to be because they want to be with other businesses around them. But when we consider where we're putting these spec buildings, I would hope that we start considering, can we put them in places where people who need the jobs find them more accessible, even to the point of clearing land that may have bad buildings on it now, but I know it's a lot of land you need for these large spec buildings. But I hope as we look down the future, how do we make these buildings more accessible to people who really need the jobs, and so they don't have to commute so far to them? So are we, by design, creating inequities?
Councilmember Scipio, this program, it's very intentional in that eligibility, it is based on geography. The geography is the city of Winston-Salem. So it is not specific to any particular industrial activity center, any commercial area. It is available to, a developer may apply for it to build a spec building anywhere in the city.
I do know we built a spec building at the business park near our airport. A number of years ago. Yeah. It's got a name that,
The Piedmont, right up there by the airport.
yeah, but there's a name for that business. Brookwood.
Brookwood.
It's some name that,
It's where our shooting range.
Yeah.
yeah. And we also built a spec building, I don't know if it was part of this fish program, at Whitaker Park, because I was there for groundbreaking. And that was a pretty, anyway, good points.
The first business park was on Lowry Street.
That's right.
That's the very first one that
And
we
that one may be
did.
full by
and
now, I don't know.
It's been full, but it's smaller buildings.
Yeah.
But yeah,
This,
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Millett, I would like to have, sometime before Monday, again, all of the spec buildings we have either invested in or built, and again, their location, and possibly even what the name of the business is now that did it. Also would like to know the time length they spent to pay us back the money. I agree, this has been very, very successful, but just like here, are we creating now our own spec building loan program, if that's what I'm reading in the CARF?
Yes, ma'am.
But before, we never done that before. We were just like investors or partners.
We're just ad hoc.
more ad hoc.
We found the same operating plan, it's just a different source. We're setting aside and saying we're being intentional about it.
Okay. I also would like to know basically what the mayor said. Where is the money coming from? What funds, what bonds, what lobs, whatever? And I'd also like to know the history of the other spec buildings and where the money came to invest in them.
Okay,
Mr.
certainly.
Ralph, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tempore Adams, council members. I just checked. So in terms of the economic development bond money that voters approved, we've got about $5.6 million remaining for economic development site and infrastructure.
I will say, and my memory can be clouded at times, but if you go back, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years, there are a lot of buildings out there off of Union Cross now down there that we did spec buildings on. And I think the one at whatever that business park is, Brookwood, I thought we owned that 50,000.
That first one.
Yeah.
The first one we did.
We did.
Councilmember Clark, Chairman Clark, we did, you're correct. The city built that. It was a much smaller facility. I want to
yes,
say
it's
it was maybe
50,000.
8,000 square feet.
Oh, okay.
That building was sold
Yeah.
to the company that is now occupying the space.
So if you go back, as the mayor said, a lot of this is just done ad hoc. We had some land at the end of the runway, we put a building up, and I think a produce company bought, I don't remember, something like that. But if you can, between now and the meeting, kind of go back in history and see if we can grab some of those. 'Cause it's a lot more than three.
And also include the amount of employees, if you can, with these businesses that now occupy these buildings. Sure.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Rao, I think you gave us a balance on the economic development bond funding. Can you also give us a balance on the economic development loan fund if $5 million comes out for this project?
So currently, there's a little over $3 million in undesignated funds in economic development.
Okay, just put all that together.
Yeah, put it together.
Thank you.
Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I did have one other question. Have we lost any possible companies because we didn't have any spec buildings? And if so, how extensive is that loss, if we can estimate?
I will answer generally that we would not be able to provide sites that might meet folks' criteria. So they're going to be folks that we probably are not even aware of that we lost. I will defer to Mark and Ellis in terms of any specific examples of folks where we were not able to meet their
Would y'all
need.
like to come up and make a comment on this? If you give your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Mayor Pro Tem Mayor, members of council, Mark Owens, 525 Vine Street. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Sabia, we have about 60 active projects currently. About half of them, as Ken mentioned, 50% are looking for spec buildings. We are cut from that process on a regular basis due to not having spec buildings. The 3 that we've worked with the most recently in these loan programs have been now our Excel Doors, Ardagh Metal Beverage, and then a French company in Park at 74 that I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head at the moment. Ma'am.
Okay, anyway.
But so just, there are hundreds of jobs, and it's something that's been really critical to this. Mayor Pro Tem, to your point, part of this revolving loan program, and Ken has done such a great job of bringing this, is to have it be more equitable for everybody to know it's available and to provide developers the opportunity to have level playing ground to understand that this is available through the city, where in the past it's been a quick ad hoc mention need and going. This would allow developers from across our city to be involved in this and know that it's available, and it would maintain that opportunity to go forward. So Ardagh Metal Beverage is a perfect example. There was a spec building available. They went into it, and then because they liked it so much, they built a 615,000 square foot one right next to it. Without that spec building, we would have lost that project.
Thank you. I'll just comment, I think this is a great program because it is truly revolving. We get the money back very quickly. I think one of our challenges is finding the land to put them on. But I hope we will approve this, and then I will look to Mr. Owens and Ms. Ellis there to go get it done.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of item G2.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Thank you very much. That is approved. And Mr. Owen, this will be on the agenda on the January 6th, which should be the first Monday in 2025. Anyway, next, G3, last item.
Item G3, consideration of items authorizing capital expenditures for the Benton Convention Center.
Mr. Rao, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Clark. So the item before you this afternoon, there's really 3 pieces of information that I would like to present to you all. First is just to identify some needs that we're having to address at the Benton Convention Center. Back in 2017, Council invested $20 million in a major renovation to the Benton, and that was a result of a facility assessment that had been done that really focused primarily on ways to improve the marketability and the financial performance of the building. At that time, there were some what we call back-of-the-house needs that were identified, but the funding mostly focused on those aesthetics and those opportunities to improve the marketability. You can see from the charts there that investment has paid off. You can see that since the mid-2010s, that annual revenues increased. Of course, then we had the bottom drop out on us with COVID. And then since then, they have been really, seeing a pace that's setting records. You don't see the 2024 numbers there yet because we're still working on the annual audit. But I can tell you that the revenues for 2024, I think, almost exceeded $6 million, which is a record. And so you can see with the second chart that conversely, the city subsidy for the Benton has gone down. We fund that subsidy both from occupancy tax funds and from general purpose dollars, the general fund. And so you can see there in 2023, the subsidy was less than $500,000, which is well under the budget that we had for that particular year. So, but here in recent years, we've been experiencing a lot of challenges with the back of the house part of the operation. Right now, probably the biggest challenge we've got is the freight elevator. It's basically inoperable, and it's a key component to be able to operate the building efficiently because that's the primary way of moving banquet furniture equipment for event organizers to move their items between the 2 levels of the convention center without having to, invest a lot of labor. And right now, the HVMG, our operator, is spending a lot of money on labor because they're having to move the equipment in other ways. So that's the first priority. So the first item here before you is to seek your approval for a contract with Schindler Elevator Corporation to basically modernize that freight elevator. Schindler Elevator Corporation is our current contract service provider for our elevators and our escalators there at the Benton. So we are asking for approval of a sole source contract with them to be able to do that work. The estimated cost is $376,060. And then on top of that, we're going to also look to replace the actual cab enclosure, so that's an additional $44,635, so about $421,000 for this particular contract. And we feel like it's critical to move on this because we've been told the lead time on getting the parts and equipment is going to be about 10 months. So it's not going to be until the end of next calendar year that we'll probably have the project completed. In addition to that, based on the challenges we've been experiencing, council approved in this year's budget $1 million to replace the roof on the Benton. Well, as we've continued to do research and get cost estimates to do that, we've determined that the cost to replace the entire roof is going to be well above $1 million. In addition to that, the cooling towers that are on top of the building are in need of replacement. And so to coordinate both of those types of projects is going to be millions of dollars. So what staff is recommending is that you all allow us to repurpose that $1 million to address some of these more immediate major maintenance needs that we have, such as the freight elevator, but also to make a repair to the roof that we do need to make now because we do have water that's infiltrating into the kitchen area of the Benton, and we just can't have that for health code reasons. In addition to that, we want to do some work on the lights in the Winston ballroom to make sure that the light operations mirror each other for the Winston and the Salem ballrooms. And then we also want to fund a facility assessment. We did one back in 2012, 2013. That was the basis for the $20 million investment that you all approved for the building. And we feel now we need to really focus on the back of the house and kind of determine what it is that what issues do we have, and at some point be able to share that with you all and have discussions about how we might be able to fund something like that. And then finally, just a little bit would be left over would be for contingency. So that's more of kind of an information piece. And then lastly, because we did have such a great year financially, and because the city subsidy is going to be well under the budget, we are requesting that we save basically $250,000 of that for addressing more unforeseen major maintenance items that may come up during the course of the fiscal year. You all already approved as a normal part of the budget $250,000 under our contract with HVNG. This would be an additional $250,000 that we would be setting aside for really for major maintenance for the building. Be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Adams.
I don't have any questions, but I have a couple of comments. Mr. Rao, if you remember, Councilmember Taylor, Clark, and I back in 12 and 13, again, another recession or something was going on financially across the country, but we realized that the convention center was falling apart, literally. There were a lot of maintenance issues that had been gone for a long time with us not doing anything, and we were basically patching a lot of the issues. Councilmember Clark and I, we used to do tours, if you remember, with you and others and Grant and everybody, when we finally, the council voted to do some updates to the convention center. And even then, I know we voted, I was happy, but I also stated that this is a work in process that will always need things fixed and repaired. And we didn't do the reserve then to set aside money for any issues that would come forward. But we also knew that every time, as Councilmember Clark said, we would dig a hole, or take a wall down, we're gonna find something that's now we gotta go fix. And that's what we found when we were doing the updates to the convention center. But I thank the council and the citizens of Winston-Salem for doing this, because this convention center has provided a lot of enjoyment to the citizens, but also to a lot of tourists and conventions and groups and organizations. I am glad, and hopefully the council will pass this, that we also knew that the roof was a problem, but we were just kind of praying that we could hold on until we could get past COVID, and hopefully we would see some increased revenue when business would come back around to our Benton Convention Center. With that being said, I do believe, and I'm going to ahead and make a motion, Councilmember Clark, that we move to approve this resolution to enhance our Convention Center, item G3.
Do I have a second?
Second
Any other questions, comments?
comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rao, how old is the Benton Convention Center?
So the Benton was built in two major sections. The first section, I think, was built in the late 60s, and then the second section was built in the early 80s.
That's right.
That's right.
The North Hall.
The north.
So it is indeed, has been a wonderful asset for our community, and so many people have used it. It was the only place for a long time where many folks in our community could have events. And like everything else, we have a lot of facilities that were built many, many years ago. We certainly need to do the maintenance on it to keep them current. And I hope that that study will be an in-depth one about what else is needed for the Benton, along with some of our other facilities that we need to really think in terms of maintenance. So I really think this is the right thing for us to do, even though the ticket price may be bigger than what we assume, but we definitely need it. I know we need that roof fixed. I don't know about every time a roof leaks, you really need to not always do patchwork. You really need to go back and figure it out. But I guess at this point, the best we can do right now is patchwork to stop that leak. So thank you.
All in favor, please vote or raise your hand. Do a hand vote. All opposed? Thank you very much. That is approved. We will now go to,
That's it.
That's it.
that's it.
And all of
Mr. City Manager, do you want to make any comments?
Just one or two quick things. I will say that I was in a meeting last week with the North Carolina Economic Development Partnership, and they said the number one, North Carolina's got a lot of great things going for it on the business community, on the business environment, but the number one issue was having property ready for business to move into. What we're talking about in spec buildings is the absolute number one priority that North Carolina is placing on getting things done and attracting people into.
We're going to do our share here.
Yes.
Just a quick note under we had the committee orientation, and most of you heard this a few moments ago at the last committee, but just, again, we have a very busy January set up, so there are a variety of things coming on. There's the chair may mention this, a civility program on the January 22nd. Our strategic planning retreat is set for the 29th and the 30th. Before that, we're going to do a tour on the 24th after the legislative breakfast that morning, and that tour is going to focus on a lot of the issues that you've been hearing about of key things in the city that need some focus, so that you'll have that information for the retreat. There are new council members and several others will be attending the essentials for newly elected officials on the 9th and 10th as well. So they're in both, particularly public safety and public works, have talked about having some of our committee meetings at alternate locations so that we could see some additional facilities and some other needs throughout the year. So that might necessitate public works as meeting at a second location as for finance maybe to meet at that same location afterwards. So it might make a little bit of a difference there in how things are being done. Same thing with community development and housing after public safety, or vice versa. There may be some
Parks and Recs
there that are going on. I think those are the key items to bring up.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Mayor's going to go build some buildings, and we will meet next on the 6th of January for your first official council meeting. We're adjourned.
Thank you.